In a world where the Vorioti family's power and reputation is renowned from the north, Duke Filio Vorioti stands as a formidable figure known for his striking looks and violent. However, despite his appealing looks, Filio's violent nature overshadowed his handsome exterior. He emanated an aura of power and danger, resembling the fierce beasts of the north who could kill with a mere glance. Even Loop, who had worked closely with Filio for a long time, occasionally felt frightened by his presence. In an unexpected turn of events, Filio develops an inexplicable longing to adopt a child, prompting his visits to multiple orphanages in search of a suitable candidate. Filio and Loop arrived at their fifth destination. However, each visit proves to be a failure as the children are terrified by Filio's presence. The beautiful child, her hair adorned with a red ribbon, became overwhelmed with emotions as her eyes filled with tears, crying as if the entire world was collapsing. Duke Filio Vorioti, whose face was filled with annoyance, frowned and waved his hands. "You're the one who asked for it, Duke," Loop replied, his voice tinged with a hint of weariness. "But I must say, this is a new record." Perplexed, the Duke inquired, "What is?" Loop sighed, his gaze fixed on his superior's imposing figure. "All of the kids are crying the moment they see your face, Duke. They seem to be genuinely terrified." A wry smile tugged at the corners of the Duke's lips. "They're rather impolite, aren't they? It seems children have a problem recognizing greatness." Despite his frustration, Filio remains determined to find a child who can see beyond his imposing exterior. His loyal secretary, Loop, accompanies him on these visits, witnessing the unyielding efforts of the Duke. "I still don't understand why you chose to adopt a child, Duke," Loop voiced his confusion. During their journey, Duke Filio Vorioti was making his way out of the orphanage where neglect and indifference reign. The director, driven by greed, sees an opportunity to exploit the Duke's desire and secure financial support for the orphanage. When a sudden shriek pierced the air, the Duke sees a teacher from the nearby orphanage scolding a scrappy child. Unfazed by the reprimand and fearlessly sank her teeth into the teacher's hand and took shelter next to the Duke. Duke Filio Vorioti gazed upon the young girl. "Hey, mister," her greasy hair and dirty clothes failing to diminish the fire in her eyes. He approached her slowly, his voice carrying a mix of curiosity and admiration. Loop realized that she was the first child who didn't shed tears upon seeing the Duke, noticing the uniqueness of her hair and eyes. "We apologize. We shall remove her immediately," the orphanage director stammered, ready to drag the child away without delay. "Loop," Filio called his trusted aide, his voice steady yet commanding. Loop's mind raced as he mentally scanned the list of children affiliated with the orphanage. That child was not on the list, he quickly reported. The director began to offer feeble excuses. "You see, Your Grace, this child has terrible manners and is always causing trouble." "So you dare disobey the Duke," Loop retorted. The director and teacher hurried to lower themselves in a deep bow. "We offer our sincerest apologies. Please forgive us." Duke Filio asked, "So, what's your name, young one?" "I don't have one," she replied, her tone laced with resignation. Duke Filio remarked, "Everyone should have a name, even if they come from an orphanage, don't you think?" "The adults call me Nia, but I despise that name," she confessed, her distaste evident. Duke Filio's black eyes sparkled with intrigue as he observed her fearless nature. "You're quite fearless, aren't you?" Duke Filio commented. Nia's arms trembled slightly, her fear finally showing. Duke Filio, taking a step closer, his voice laced with a hint of menace. "It wouldn't be strange if I killed you on the spot." Despite her fear, Nia stood her ground, her limbs rigid and her teeth clenched, determined not to yield. In that charged moment, Filio abruptly halted his advance. He studied the child's eyes, mirroring his own, as they shimmered momentarily, as though sprinkled with golden flecks. Baby beast, Filio uttered under his breath, a satisfied smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He scrutinized Nia intently, realizing her unyielding spirit. Indeed, Nia does not suit you at all, he concluded, his black-red eyes gradually calming, reverting to their pure black hue. Filio selected a more fitting name for the fearless child before him. Leonia Vorioti, that's your new name, he declared, his voice resonating with authority. Nia's mouth widened in surprise, but her response was swift. It's too long. Leonia is your name, idiot, Filio corrected, momentarily amused by her defiance. I'm not an idiot, Nia retorted, her fiery spirit flaring. The Duke gently lifted the child. We'll have to call in a teacher once we get home. There's much to teach you. Following these words, the Duke entered into the carriage, taking the child with him. Duke Filio's lips curled into a faint smile, a touch of paternal affection. Nia, still filled with spirit, couldn't help but respond. Nia exclaimed, Mister, are you having fun, messing with a child? Duke Filio let out a hearty laugh, his heart warming to the feisty girl before him. It's more fun than I thought. This mister seems like a pervert, she retorted. Luke and the knights watched in utter shock as the carriage departed, leaving them behind. Wait a moment, what just happened? As Luke spat out. At that moment, he renames her Leonia. The crest of the Vorioti family featured a roaring black lion, a symbol both powerful and majestic. It perfectly represented the lion-hearted nature of Filio, the Duke of Vorioti. And there was no name more befitting his daughter than Leonia, for she, too, possessed the spirit of a lion. Luke, initially skeptical of Filio's unconventional choice, begins to comprehend the depth of his employer's intentions. He contemplates the reasons behind Filio's desire for a child and wonders what led him to embark on this quest instead of pursuing a conventional path, such as marriage. Leonia, a spirited and independent girl, finds herself caught in the web of an oppressive orphanage. Having endured 2 long years in its confines, she has witnessed numerous adults coming to adopt children, each with their own reasons and motivations. But when Filio arrives at the orphanage, Leonia is taken aback by his astonishingly simple explanation for adopting a child. You're adopting because your friend told you about his kid? Seriously? Leonia expressed her disbelief. Duke Filio Vorioti sat in his opulent carriage, his mind filled with the words of his close friend, Count Canis Linnet. Canis, always brimming with pride for his own children, had passionately extolled the virtues of fatherhood to Filio. But when are you going to get married? Canis had asked, his eyes gleaming with mischievous delight. When you die, Filio had retorted, a playful smirk gracing his lips. I want to become in-laws with you though. Canis had insisted, his enthusiasm infectious. As they bantered back and forth, Filio found himself captivated by Canis' genuine joy. The chubby little bottoms wrapped in diapers, the endearing folds of baby arms, and the radiant welcome his children bestowed upon him after a tiring day, all of it sounded irresistible. Leaning his head against the carriage window, Filio observed the families passing by on the streets, their laughter and contentment tangible. A flicker of curiosity sparked within him, urging him to explore the possibility of experiencing that joy for himself. Intrigued by Filio's unorthodox reasoning, Leonia can't help but scoff at his apparent foolishness. Yet, she also senses a glimmer of hope. Desperate to escape the confines of the orphanage, she seizes this opportunity and agrees to become Filio's adopted daughter, uncertain of what the future holds. Leonia, a spirited and perceptive girl who had spent 2 long years in the confines of the orphanage, couldn't help but smirk as Filio revealed his reasoning for adopting a child. My one and only child seems to talk very nicely, he had said, with a mixture of amusement and wonder. Old man, are you stupid? Leonia blurted out, unable to contain her incredulity. Filio chuckled, genuinely amused by her straightforwardness. Perhaps I am, but there's something intriguing about the idea, don't you think? Leonia's eyes narrowed as she contemplated his words. I suppose there is, she admitted reluctantly. But if you're foolish enough to adopt me for such a reason, then I guess I'm just as foolish to agree. Filio's smile broadened, a genuine warmth shining in his eyes. Sometimes the best decisions are born from the most unexpected reasons. As they depart from the orphanage, Leonia's unease begins to surface. She can't shake the feeling that something is amiss. Observing Loop, Filio's loyal knight, conversing with the orphanage director, she grows suspicious. Leonia confronted the Duke, her voice tinged with a mix of anger and determination. The staff here have been embezzling funds meant for us children. They're involved with despicable pimps too. Filio's expression hardened, a steely resolve settling upon his features. Do you even know what a pimp means? He asked, his voice low but firm. Leonia met his gaze squarely, her eyes ablaze with defiance. I do. They buy people and sell them to their clients. Leonia's firmness surprised Filio, and he couldn't help but clench his fists. They plan to sell one of the girls. Filio's eyes hardened, his anger simmering beneath the surface. Should I punish them all? Leonia hesitated for a moment, her voice softening as she corrected herself, except for Teacher Coney. She always took good care of us. With a twinge of curiosity, Filio mentioned the woman's physical appearance, the one with brown hair and a wound on her finger, right? Leonia's eyes widened in astonishment, struck by Filio's accurate description. She regarded him with a mix of awe and admiration, her trust in him deepening. Leonia, determined to protect herself, concealed her bruises by pulling down her sleeves. With an eerie calmness, she recounted the horrors inflicted upon her and the other children. As Filio listened intently, his eyes flickered with a mixture of anger and empathy. How should I kill them? Duke asked, his voice dripping with a vengeful tone. But Leonia shook her head, her small frame trembling with a resolute determination. No, she replied, her black eyes gleaming with a dark intensity. Torture them until they beg for death. Filio, on the other hand, felt an inexplicable warmth in his chest, as if something hidden had been stirred within him. Leonia's innocence tugged at his heart, and he couldn't help but wonder, is she truly just 5 years old? His mind briefly wandered to Canis' daughter, Lupercla, recalling her youthful charm and innocence. However, Leonia seemed different, burdened with experiences far beyond her tender age. Her words held a maturity that surpassed expectations, delving into embezzlement and torture, topics not commonly found on a child's lips. Duke, Loop interjected, returning with the adoption documents in hand. Without a word of praise, Filio gestured for Loop to hand over the papers. As Leonia's personal information unfolded before him, he silently contemplated their next course of action. Suddenly, an idea sparked within him, fueled by both justice and a dark curiosity. Loop, Filio spoke, his voice filled with resolve, you stay here. Loop's confusion etched across his face, expecting their return to the Duke's mansion. However, Filio remained uninterested, his attention solely focused on Leonia's plight. The orphanage needs to be cleansed, Filio declared, his eyes gleaming with an unyielding determination. We shall clean up the mess left by those who have wronged them. Loop's mouth twitched, words caught in his throat, as he resigned himself to Filio's command. His face turned as pale as his hair, realizing the depth of what lay ahead. Leonia, ever spirited, encouraged Loop with a shout, her words resonating with both anticipation and vengeance. While you're at it, chop off their arms and legs. Beat their backs with your belt. Smash their nose into a plate full of water, so they never get up again. Loop's expression shifted to a sickly shade of blue, mirroring his hair. In contrast, Filio smiled with an unsettling satisfaction, captivated by Leonia's dark desires. Ah, except for Teacher Coney, Leonia interjected, waving her small hand dismissively. She was good to us. Leonia urged Loop to take care of himself, her youthful innocence flickering amidst the shadows of her experiences. The evidence of their embezzlement is in the safe behind the photo frame. As the carriage departed, Loop remained stunned, his gaze fixed on the receding vehicle. Leonia continued waving, her small figure fading into the distance until she was no longer visible. Is she truly the Duke's hidden daughter? Manus, one of the knights, questioned, unable to fathom the lengths Filio went to search for his true kin. The impact of Leonia's presence lingered heavily, leaving the knights awestruck. They couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that clung to her, combined with an unsettling familiarity. And the way she smiled while uttering those terrifying words, added Frobo, another knight, his voice filled with unease. Loop, exhausted, spoke up, his expression weighed down by weariness. Let's focus on the task at hand. With a shared understanding, the knights rallied together, pitying Loop for the burden he carried. Their duties lay before them, a mansion to return to, and the dark secrets hidden within its depths. What lies ahead for Duke Paul Vorioti and his newly adopted daughter, Leonia? How do they address the issues at the orphanage and punishment to the corrupt staff members? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with your friends. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.